The night had stretched thin and cruel across the Wyoming plains, the kind of night where the wind clawed at them, wards of a lonely cabin like it wanted inside. And inside that cabin, under the dim glow of a kerosene lamp, a widowed cowboy sat frozen on the edge of a narrow bed, his rough hands trembling as his newborn son wailed with a hunger he could not satisfy, the sound sharp and desperate, cutting straight through Jack Callahan's chest as if every cry were a reminder of everything he had lost in a single blood-soaked hour 3 days earlier, when his wife Mary had gone into labor too early and never come back out again, leaving him with a tiny, red-faced boy who rooted and screamed and searched for a comfort Jack did not know how to give. The bottle of watered-down cow's milk sitting uselessly on the table beside him because the baby rejected it every time, turning purple with rage and hunger. And Jack whispered apologies over and over like prayers, his voice hoarse, his eyes burning, because he was a man who had broken horses, faced down rustlers, buried friends, but nothing had prepared him for the helpless terror of holding his starving child while the world outside howled and did not care. And when the crying grew so frantic that the baby's little chest hitched between breaths, Jack stood abruptly, pacing the single-room cabin, boots thudding on the warped floorboards as he fought panic, memories crashing into him of Mary's final moments, her fingers clutching his sleeve, her breath shallow as she'd whispered, "Don't let him be alone." And Jack choked on that promise now, because he was failing already, and it was then, just as despair pressed so hard on his ribs he thought he might break, that a knock came at the door, soft but certain. 3 measured taps that did not belong to the wind, and Jack froze, heart hammering, hand instinctively moving to the rifle mounted on the wall, because no one came out this far after dark unless they had reason, and rumors of Apache raids still haunted the territory, whispered by men who had never met an Apache but feared them all the same. And the baby screamed louder, his tiny fists beating the air, and Jack hesitated only a second before striding to the door, yanking it open to face the night, and there she stood, framed by moonlight and snow, an Apache woman, her dark hair braided neatly, her posture calm, her eyes steady and unafraid, a woven shawl wrapped around her shoulders, and Jack's breath caught in his throat, fear and confusion tangling as his hand tightened on the rifle stock. Every story he'd ever heard roaring in his ears, but she did not flinch, did not reach for a weapon, did not even look past him into the cabin, until the baby's cry split, the silence again, sharp and hungry, and something softened in her gaze, something achingly human, and she raised her hands slowly, palms open, her voice low, and even as she spoke words that would echo in Jack Callahan's soul for the rest of his life. "Your child is starving," she said. English careful but clear. "I have milk." And for a moment the world seemed to tilt, the wind dying, the fear draining from Jack's limbs as disbelief washed over him. Because this woman, this Apache woman standing alone at his door in the dead of night, was offering what he needed most. And every instinct told him to slam the door, to protect what little he had left. But the baby's cries cut through all reason, raw and relentless, and Jack looked down at his son's purple face, the tiny mouth searching for life, and something inside him broke open, grief and hope colliding as he stepped aside without fully understanding why, allowing her to enter, the door creaking shut behind her as the baby's cries echoed against the cabin walls. And she moved with quiet purpose, kneeling by the bed, her presence steady and warm in the cold room. And when she took the child from Jack's arms, he nearly protested, fear flaring again, but the baby latched instantly, the cries dissolving into desperate sucking sounds, and the silence that followed was so profound it made Jack's knees weak, tears spilling unchecked down his weathered face as he watched his son finally feed, watched the woman cradle him with practiced care, her expression serene. And in that fragile, sacred moment, as the storm raged uselessly outside and the past threatened to swallow him whole, Jack Callahan realized that everything he thought he knew about enemies, about survival, about the lines drawn between people, was beginning to change. And he did not yet know that this knock on his door would bind his fate to hers in ways far deeper than gratitude, deeper than fear, deeper even than the land itself. The baby's frantic hunger eased into slow, rhythmic breaths as he fed, his tiny fingers curling into the fabric of the Apache woman's shawl. And Jack stood rooted a few steps away, afraid that if he moved too suddenly, the fragile peace would shatter, his mind racing with questions he could not yet speak, watching the way she supported the child's head with a tenderness that spoke of experience and loss. And when the baby finally pulled away, milk-drunk and sighing, she did not smile or look for thanks. She simply rocked him gently, humming a low, wordless tune that felt older than the cabin, older than the land Jack had claimed with fence posts and sweat. And the sound settled something raw inside him, a place that had been screaming since Mary's death. And when she finally looked up at him, her eyes held no accusation, only quiet resolve. And she said her name was Naya, that she had been passing near the river when she heard the baby's cries carried on the wind, cries no mother could ignore. And Jack swallowed hard at that word, mother, nodding stiffly as he explained in halting fragments that his wife had died, that he didn't know what he was doing, that he had tried everything he knew. And Naya listened without interruption, her gaze steady, as if grief was a language she understood fluently. And when he finished, she told him she had lost a child once too, taken by sickness during a winter harsher than this one, and the admission landed between them like a bridge, fragile but real, and outside the wind screamed again, rattling the shutters, reminding Jack of the danger of letting a stranger stay, especially one his neighbors would call an enemy. Yet he could not bring himself to ask her to leave, not while his son slept peacefully for the first time since birth. And so the night stretched on, the lamp burning low, as Naya showed him how to swaddle the baby properly, how to hold him so his breathing stayed easy, how to listen for hunger before it turned to panic. And Jack absorbed every word like a man, drowning who had finally found something solid to cling to. And when dawn crept pale and cold through the window, Naya rose quietly, preparing to go, and panic flared again in Jack's chest sharper than before, because he knew he could not do this alone. Not yet, and he asked her to stay, just until the baby was stronger, his voice cracking with the weight of the request, knowing what it meant in this land where trust was rationed and prejudice ran deep. And she studied him for a long moment before agreeing, warning him that her presence would bring trouble if others found out, that men feared what they did not understand. And Jack nodded, because he already knew that truth, had lived by it himself. And as the sun rose higher, illuminating the cabin that had once held a young family and now held something entirely unexpected, Jack Callahan did not yet see the storm that would follow, the whispers, the threats, the line he would be forced to choose between loyalty and survival. But as he watched Naya cradle his son with a care that felt like a promise, he understood one thing with absolute clarity: the knock on his door had not been an accident, and whatever came next would change all of their lives forever.